Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer, Mike Miller.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mike's on Mike. I'm Mike Miller. Mike Hightower is under the weather today, so he is not joining us, I'm afraid, but we all hope that he feels better very quickly. Mike Tolbert, of course, is back at the farm, and he's joining us online, so it's going to be just him and me. No guest today, just the two of us jabbing away for 30 minutes, and we're glad you're with us, and we thank you very much for that. Of course, Mike's on Mike brought to you by the Jacksonville Historical Society, which is housed inside the Jacksonville History Center. And you know, a recent headline in the Jacksonville Daily Record caught our eye, along with the eyes of a lot of other people. It read, "Rising Costs Sinking Big Projects in Downtown Jacksonville." The article was written by Daily Record reporter Rick Anderson, who is currently covering the JEA trial, and we plan to have him on after that trial is over to talk more about all of this. Today, though, we want to discuss what seems to be an alarming trend with downtown projects. It started with beautiful renderings and high prices, and now seems to be fading away because of increased construction costs and difficulties in obtaining large project financing. And Mr. Tolbert, nice to have you with us. Thank you for bailing me out today. And why don't you start it off?
Well, you know, Mike, that article in the Daily Record was alarming. If you recall, and I think it was our 10th episode, we had Lori Boyer on with us, the CEO of the Downtown Investment Authority. Mm-hmm. And after that interview, I think we all, because of the rosy picture she painted, I think we all walked away feeling pretty damn good about what's going on in downtown.
Yep.
And there are some good things happening. I mean, the beautiful Friendship Fountain just recently reopened. My goodness gracious.
Beautiful.
And there are, yeah, it is beautiful. And as she pointed out, there are a lot of apartments going up in downtown. I think she said the number is about to hit 7,500 or 10,000. I can't recall.
Yep.
But here's something what she said.
It's a good thing you're long distance.
Can't throw things across the room. If you go back to what our role is and what we do from a redevelopment agency standpoint, I think we've accomplished a lot during the Curry administration. So when I talk about the FIS building, and that involved a Florida Blue relocation of parking and then the construction of the new building, we've increased the number of residential units and the number of residents downtown from 2,000 to 7,500 in that period. If you look at what was being built back in 2012, it was a 7-Eleven, it was new windows at Mocha, it was a renovation in the chamber. We're now spending, private investment is spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I have about 1,000 residential units under construction right now in downtown, all at the same time.
How many again?
1,000.
Wow.
So
in addition to the choice of words.
But that's in addition to the 7,500
residents.
Right.
Correct. That will bring us to over 10,000 residents when those are come online. And they're all over downtown. There is the one Riverside project, that's the Old Times Union site. Artia's on the South Bank. Doro is in the Sports and Entertainment District. Townhomes in La Villa. Lofts at Cathedral that Vescor's doing over. They're all over. But that's how much momentum there is and how much is under construction right now. That's our core business.
You know, having 10,000 housing units in downtown has been the goal since the Delaney administration, and progress really is being made. But to me, to see all of the failing projects in that one article was just very, very startling. If the DIA is spending millions of dollars to incentivize large construction projects, especially if they're failing, I wonder if that shouldn't be their core business. It looks like the construction of apartments has gotten a lot of momentum. It looks like it's on its way to success. So maybe they need to change their core business to go back to those big multi-million-dollar projects.
Well, and the other thing on that, Mike, that I'd like to bring up is the idea that, and we talked about this with Lori, of course, so much of the housing developments are going on the South Bank, and they're going on in Riverside and in Avondale, all now part of the expanded CBD, downtown business district, but it's not in the downtown core. We're not seeing that kind of residential development in the downtown core, which is something that, as you pointed out, we in the Delaney administration and subsequent administrations all were hoping would become the case. Has that been your observation as well?
Yeah, it has been. And one of the questions Laurie even said the 3.9 square mile downtown in Jacksonville is a lot larger than other downtowns, core downtowns.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if one of the fixes ought to be, let's re-examine that. We need the downtown to be that big and wide. And what's the advantage of that? If we could clear the focus a little bit more, I think it would be important.
Well, and I think people would have more of a sense of identity, too, because it's very hard for people, and as we recall, of course, she was talking about the boundaries of the downtown area being I-95 to the south, as well as to the west, and north up to State and Main. Well, if you talk to people who are near that I-95 on the south, they're going to say, we don't consider ourselves to be part of downtown. We consider ourselves to be part of San Marco, or we consider ourselves to be part of Riverside, but they don't identify as being part of the downtown core. And I think that's a psychological issue, too, that Lori and other city leaders need to take a look at. At least that's my perspective.
Do you know why, Mike? I don't. Do you know why they expanded the boundaries like they have? What was behind that?
I don't. If I were to speculate, I would say it might be because of the incentive program and the way that that's shaped, that there might be an easier way to sell some of those incentives if one can categorize them as part of a downtown development than if we were to say that we're doing incentive deals for areas like San Marco and Riverside, which already are, I wouldn't say, they're expensive, but they're nevertheless different from what the downtown core, as we generally think of it, is. I don't know, though. That's pure speculation on my part.
Well, the South Bank has had a good bit of development.
Yep.
Springfield is really going through a great change after a lot. I don't know if the DIA has anything to do with that. I think it's more the urban homesteaders who moved into there to try to fix what was broke and make it a really nice place.
Yep.
You got Brooklyn,
yep,
which is over where the Times Union used to be, in that area right in there with all that development. But you're right, that does not do anything for the core of downtown. I mean, I sit here and wonder, why is it that after all this time, two prime pieces of real estate that are owned by the city in downtown, three really. One is the old landing site, which is now RiverFront Park. The other is across the street at the old courthouse site. Why do those pieces of property sit there without anything going on? I mean, I know RiverFront Plaza, and we're going to talk about this, I think, next week. But I know RiverFront Plaza had a really beautiful plan. People want to park there. I think they're most interested in making that a park. And ViStar has turned that piece of grass into an important place in downtown without anything, just having concerts there and people come for activities. But I wonder, they had a great design. People really seemed to like the design for that park there. They were questioning about the sign or statue or whatever it was. I mean, some people didn't like that.
Yep.
There were some questions about a huge building that was going to be on the edge, but people seemed to really like that plan. And then all of a sudden, that plan just went away. And now that they started talking about scaling that down to a playground on the river, which could be used not only for children, but would be a part of the resiliency effort down there, and a restaurant in the back part of the park. Well, all of a sudden, the DIA has flipped that so that the playground is now in the back and the restaurant is on the riverfront. I mean, I don't get it. But we make plans and then we just blow them up or something. I don't know. And I don't know who changes them at the last minute. Like, I think this happened at the last minute. That's why we want to look into it next week.
Yep. Well, as you pointed out, Lori Boyer said that after all of this time, that proposed 44-story residential tower on the landing site, that's no longer around. That's gone. The 22-story mixed-use development on the courthouse site, that's going to possibly go back on the market again. So I don't know why. The intentions are all good. And I think, as we said in the opening, we understand that financing has become an issue, and a number of other things are. But, before we give out these contracts or we hire these developers, we got to make sure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And if not, that there are tough enough clawbacks that would disincentivize them from bailing out or not having their ducks in a row before they get the financing or they get the approval from the city. I think that's all very important.
Well, it's not all new big buildings too. If you look a little north of the river, you've got buildings like the old Independent Life building. These are historic sites. I mean, these are really old, nice, good buildings. The Ambassador Hotel, the Central Bank building, and they're all in default of their development agreements. And it looks like, according to that article we talked about, that a lot of the developers are going to start offloading these projects. So instead of new buildings being open, restored buildings being open and operating and people coming in and out, you've got some unfinished projects that are surrounded by construction fence. I mean, it's nonsense.
And let's not forget, of course, the one that's probably the most high profile of all of them, and that's the Laura Street Trio. And again, this project is stuck in limbo once again. All those, as you pointed out, were on the North Bank. But let's go to the other side of the river where the River City Brewing Company operated there. That 22-story building with 410 residential units, a waterfront restaurant, 535-space parking garage, all on hold after the developer experienced a $30 million increase in construction costs. Now, I can recall vividly when we rolled out the Better Jacksonville plan and we came out with all those intersection improvements, we tagged those at $25 million apiece because we needed to put a number in there to go along with the legislation. We found out afterwards that they were going to cost more than $25 million to do those, but there was enough in the kitty to be able to afford the increased costs, or some of those projects actually went below the line, which were the projects that we said we'd have enough money to do, but had others on hold in case those above the line fell through for one reason or another. But I don't understand why it is, again, that there are not those contingencies because of something like a $30 million project that all of a sudden doesn't have the funding to complete. And with that one, and that's something that...
No, I don't...
I was going to say that's something you and I talked about as well. And there are people who are saying that part of that issue has been the fault of the developer in that, Steve Atkins, because Steve didn't want to bring in any partners to help with the financing on it. He wanted to own them all himself. Right. And he could have possibly found other developers. He would have had to give up a piece of the action, of course. But if he would have opened that up to venture capitalists out there, I think they'd be able to find whatever money they needed to do the trio. What do you think?
I don't know. It's way over my pay grade, but I would hope so. Obviously, what they've been doing and the way they've been working it ain't working. It ain't gonna fly. Our good friend Attorney Chris Hand was recently on the This Week in Jacksonville show with Kent Justice, and Chris addressed this article itself, and let's look at what he had to say.
There were plans to build a 44-story residential tower on the former landing site. That has now gone away. There were plans to build a 22-story.
Here's some of the renderings from the former landing site.
Exactly. This one we're showing now, a 22-story mixed-use facility on the former courthouse site. That has now gone away. There were plans to revitalize some historic buildings in the west part of downtown, the old Ambassador Hotel, the Independent Life building. According to the DIA, those developers have now defaulted on their agreements with the Downtown Investment Authority. There are several other projects that seem delayed. There was a plan to build a mixed-use project on the site of the former River City Brewing Company on the South Bank. There's now an effort to try to forge a new agreement between the city of Jacksonville and those developers. The Laura Street trio. 3 historic buildings right in the core of downtown Jacksonville. That is also still on hold while negotiations take place. And we just learned in the last few days that the Museum of Science and History, which is supposed to move from the South Bank to the North Bank, has now asked for additional time to raise the money it needs to help facilitate that move. So I think this is not necessarily dissimilar from what we're seeing in other places, but while there certainly has been some good news downtown, such as the revitalization of Friendship Fountain, a lot of these development projects are either now going off the board or seem to be stuck at the moment. Something definitely to watch going forward.
You know, one of the things Chris said, I've heard repeated a lot, and they're saying a lot of this failure is due to the pandemic and to rising construction costs, and that is happening all across the country. Well, for the fun of it, I Googled recently completed downtown projects in Tampa and Orlando, and I saw a different story now, I'm telling you. From the Tampa Bay Times, let me read this. Back in 2013, Jeff Vinnick said his Water Street Tampa project would develop in phases. It was about 20 acres downtown at the time. The next year, it was up to 40 at a cost of more than $1 billion. 9 years later, the footprint for the development encompasses more than 70 acres with some 9 million square feet of space under development at a cost of $3.5 billion. We're still in phase 1, but we won't be much longer. Water Street, which is a developer, I think, unveiled a handful of major components late in 2020, including 2 new residential towers and an office tower, a new public Greenwise market, and a JW Marriott hotel. Only a few big pieces of what developers consider to be Water Street's first phase have yet to open, and those are nearing completion. That's far different from what we're seeing here in Jacksonville.
True.
And you know, and then you look at Orlando. What I found out about Orlando, like find it here. I don't know what to do with it. Well, that's not very good. Happens when you get old. Well, anyhow, Orlando, the Orlando report.
As you can see, folks, we
similar.
rehearsed this very, very, very well.
The Orlando thing was very much like the Tampa thing. It was very positive. It said, I remember it said this: despite the pandemic and other factors, downtown Orlando is alive and well, moving forward. A lot going on down there. So I guess my point is, the notion that this is necessarily going on everywhere in the country might not be exactly accurate. And somebody needs to look at that.
No, but when you take a look at certainly the Orlando market, I can't say the same for Tampa, but when you look at the Orlando market, you can see why land speculators, developers, and others want to become part of that story. It's not just the downtown area that Orlando's exploding. Look at the amount of money that Disney has already committed to investing in the Orlando area. Universal has invested. They've got a brand new park that's just opened at Universal. And I think you're going to see the same from SeaWorld in not too distant future. Well, people want to be part of a winner. And they view Orlando, and that's, of course, a tri-county area, Orange, Osceola, and Brevard. They see that as you know, all part of a major region of development and feel that everything can succeed as a result of that. Maybe that's one of the problems that we have, is that we just, you know, I used to say this before, that when I worked at JTA for Mike Blaylock, who was the CEO at the time, Mike used to always like to say to people, what does Jacksonville want to be when it grows up? Well, we know what Orlando wanted to be when it grew up, and they've done a pretty good job of doing it. Tampa, with their Riverwalk and with the baseball field and all of the other things that they've got going for them, they've got their own centric area, if you will, of interest that I'm sure attracts a lot of developers. Maybe our problem here is that we just don't have that. The identification is not there for people to be able to rally around or feel good about rallying around. And I know that's
well, one thing that Tampa has is Jeff Vinnick, who owns the Tampa Bay Lightning,
yes,
and who was a partner with Microsoft. I had a brain fart there for a minute. Bill Gates, But Vinnick has invested tons and tons and tons of money. That's why things are happening down there. Maybe if our friend Rashad Khan would think about doing something like that in the core area in downtown, as opposed to out by the football stadium with the Four Seasons Hotel, it could change the dynamics down there very much.
Yeah.
You know, I'm wondering about a lot of things, Mike. The DIA was formed in 2012.
Its
So
predecessor,
that's
I'm sorry,
14 years.
the predecessor was DDA, correct? Wasn't that really the predecessor?
But the Downtown Investment Authority was started in 2012, and then Ms. Boyer has been there for the last 5 years.
Right.
I'm wondering if it's time for a reexamination of all this. Do we need to change? Do we need to change leadership? Do we need to change the structure? Do we need to change the focus? It's been suggested, I've read by some folks, that why don't Jacksonville and the DIA concentrate on Laura Street between the St. James Building, City Hall, and the St. Johns River, the two Saints?
Mm-hmm.
And think about the buildings in there and what could be done, and that includes the Laura Street trio. Why isn't the focus there? Should the focus be more on landscaping downtown and creating more livable downtown and becoming and the riverfront parks? I mean, should we not worry so much about these damn big buildings that fail? They look pretty in the pictures,
Mm-hmm.
and focus more on the small things that make things better, which may attract the developers. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you this, and it doesn't have perhaps a direct effect on downtown, but it sure had an effect on me. I had to go out to the St. John's Town Center the other day to pick something up at a clothing store. And I got to tell you something. I thought I was in the middle of the Christmas shopping season. The place was jammed. People walking around everywhere, cars everywhere. The restaurant parking lots were full. And I'm talking now about middle of the afternoon, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The amount of residential development going on, both at JTB as well as on Gate Parkway and the areas surrounding that, it's just exploding. To me, they took a look once again at that central town center area, the concept of town center area, and said, you know what, this is going to explode in popularity. Let's build there. That's where we want to be, is near where all that action is. And how much of that siphoned off potential development closer to the downtown area because they didn't have, and we don't have, the same kinds of attracting companies and businesses that would make a developer, again, want to come to the downtown area. Now when they can go to the St. John's Town Center.
And they got plenty of restaurants.
And plenty of...
It seems to be in downtown, the restaurants are coming back. I see the Mexican place that was at the landing is coming back downtown on Bay Street.
Yeah, but Burrito Gallery closed, and that was one of the major areas.
I was just fixing to say, you got some coming and some going.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I think I've been in and around Jacksonville for over 50 years, and the subject of downtown and downtown development and what to do about downtown has always been the topic of conversation, and there's some smart people in Jacksonville, and I'm unsure as to why we can't seem to get our act together. We get things going one way and they fall off the cliff on the other side, and I just don't know what the answer is to that.
I don't either, and you have to wonder about that mentality that you're talking about here and how that is going to impact major projects that are coming down the pipeline. I mean, let's not forget the stadium deal is still hanging out there. We're supposed to hear something in the next couple of months, we hope, about some framework that will be put together that Weinstein is working out with the Jaguars and their attorneys. But one thing we're not hearing about anymore, and personally, and I think I can speak for you too, Mike, I'm happy about, and that is that they don't seem to be talking as much about that entertainment center surrounding the stadium as they were once before. That was going to push that price up to over $2 billion with all of that. And I heard a lot of people screaming and saying, wait a minute, I don't want to, we didn't want to do a Lot J when that was brought up, and now you guys are just taking Lot J and putting it on steroids, and they're going to make it into an even larger project. Well, I don't see the support for that, and I think they're starting to figure that out pretty quickly here, because nobody's talking about that. Now they're just talking about the stadium renovation.
Well, there was also a story recently where Councilman Borland, who's been working on the jail committee, I think he's chair of the jail committee, said the cost for building a new jail could be as much as $1.4 billion.
Yeah.
So we may not be able to get any private developer buildings built in downtown, but it sounds like we're going to be building a lot of government structure. That's for sure.
No, that is truly the thing. So what do we do about this? What does a city do about something like this? Are there other models that we can look at to say this is the same problem as they had in Wichita, Kansas, and this is what they did to turn it around? How does one turn something like that around? It's massive, and it's not going to happen overnight.
No, and it needs momentum. I would think that if we're reading about the failure of these big building projects, then others outside of Jacksonville also know about them. That may be prospective developers.
Yep.
So it's got to create a pause. It's got to make you wonder. It's kind of like I guess it's kind of like I'm a really good football player, and I have choices as where I can go play football. Do I want to go to a 3-5-10 team, or do I want to go to a 9-3 team? I mean, you make your choices, and I hope I've got to believe that this is not good for our image or our building momentum for other things.
Somebody asked me yesterday, what would it take to get Taylor Swift to come to Jacksonville? I said the Jaguars would have to get Kelsey on the roster. That's the only way we're going to get her here is to get Kelsey here, and then she'll come and watch a game or two. But that's the kind of attraction you need to bring the kinds of people here that you would want to have coming here. And it's almost mind-boggling. It is almost mind-boggling. A lot of other things that we're going to have time to talk about here, maybe not on this show today, but one of the things that I know I wanted to get into, Mike, and I know next week we're going to hopefully get into some of the projects like the park that you talked about earlier, but our legislative session is starting to wind down. Every day you pick up the paper or look at the news and you see other measures that are falling by the wayside. They're just not getting the juice to take them to the floor and try to get them passed. And I'm going to be very interested to see how a lot of these projects, many of which, by the way, that impact us on our region, how that's going to come out at the end of the day in Tallahassee.
No question about it. And, let's talk about next week's show just a little bit, because
Sure.
it's really a partner with what we just talked about today. And it's something that is intriguing to me, and it goes back to the RiverFront Park, and the changes down there between the restaurant going up on the water and the playground going from the water's edge to the back of the park area. When Mayor Deegan made her inaugural speech, her swearing-in speech, one of the things that she talked about was resiliency.
Yes.
And that was going to be front and center. Part of the issue, one of the big issues with putting that restaurant on the river as opposed to a playground on the river, is that it has all kinds of resiliency issues. But the mayor came out and endorsed moving the restaurant to the front. And the chamber came out and endorsed moving the restaurant to the front. And that really seems to upset a lot of people, especially a lot of people who are considered to be important members of the Deegan political base. And that's going to be an ongoing story. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. And I'm anxious to get into that next week, and let's talk more about that.
And I know, and I think you and I talked about this offline, but I know resiliency was not the issue back in the days when River City Brewing was being developed, or even what Crawdaddy's. Is Crawdaddy still around? I don't know if it is. I don't think it is. No, I didn't think so. I don't know
it's
when.
been gone.
I didn't know when it closed. But did they ever have flooding problems or any problems like that that were created by natural weather disasters? Because I don't recall anything at River City.
Yes, they did. I mean, especially with big storms. Yeah, they had some. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. Man, you're right. You're right. When River City Brewery was like the third, I want to say the third restaurant or whatever on that spot. You had Diamond Head, Fred Levy and Diamond Head. You had someplace else that was a disco on that in that area. You had something else, and you had River City Brewery. I think Diamond Head was right before River City Brewery. I don't have them in any order. So that used to be called Friendship Park. Yes, where the River City Brewery is. When I've had a couple of festivals in there during the day. Yeah, with lots of people before they put the restaurant there. One of the reasons the restaurant was built there was because of the new Acosta Bridge coming across, and it was going to move further to the east, and so it was going to go right through where the restaurant was. So the restaurant, a new restaurant was conceived in that area. The part was already going to be shortened anyhow, going to be messed up. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you have River City Brewery there. That became the restaurant.
I got you. By the way, one other project which also does not seem to be going as it was planned is MOSH, the Museum of Science and History. That was supposed to be going on Bay Street to the North Bank. They needed to raise something like $40 million. They were supposed to have $20 million raised by the 1st of February. They're not there yet, and we're already now almost at the 1st of March. But they have, I think, until the end of March to come up with the rest of that balance of $40 million. And I'm sure there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but I'm not hearing an awful lot about any kind of a public capital campaign to raise that kind of money. Have you heard anything about that at all?
No, I haven't. But I'm going to tell you something. Knowing Jacksonville like I do, and the generosity of some of the people with deep pockets, I can't believe that they will actually not make that happen. I just got to believe in my heart that there's going to be a way that that's going to happen. Again, we don't need failures. We need successes. And I think there are enough good people with lots of money that will be willing to invest to make sure MOSH is still around and moves to that new site.
Yet, not to take issue with what you're saying here, but if I were the directors of MOSH, if I were on that board or whatever, I'd say, okay, I'm ready to move to the north end, to the north side, like Riverwalk, but on Bay Street, but I don't want to be out there by myself as an island. That's supposed to be all part of a larger development, isn't it? Isn't that just a piece in that puzzle? And if the other pieces are if the other pieces are not ready to go, and if we don't start seeing some cranes and some earth movers, then do we really want to move this from an area that's been established to an area that's new and undeveloped?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. Again, that's over my pay grade. But it would be a compliment to the Four Seasons Hotel.
I guess it really would. Though, I'll tell you, MOSH, if it weren't for public and private education and the field trips that go there and all the other activities that our school systems really keep that place moving, I'm not sure that a hotel would be enough to be able to drive that amount of business. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
No.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're coming to the end here, my friend. It's been fun with the two of us. I miss Mike Hightower, of course, and hope that he feels better. But tell us a little bit more about what we're going to do next week and how you want to talk about the park, will you?
Well, I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I'm not sure yet, but going back, but going back to Hightower not being with us, it was fun get an opportunity to actually say something this week.
That's very true. Well, he came down with Tallahassee-itis, I think, because he was there and didn't get home till very late last night. And when he called up this morning and said, Mike, I'm just not going to be able to make it. I'm not feeling well at all. So we wish him well. And I'm sure Sue will, I was going to say Sue would take care of him, but I'm knowing Mike, no one takes care of him. He takes care of himself. But nevertheless, we hope we'll have him back next week.
I'm surprised anybody who goes over to Tallahassee during the session doesn't come home sick.
Including the representatives and senators, too, for that matter. Mike, thank you.
They're all sick anyway.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank
Good
you,
to talk
buddy.
to you. We'll talk to you next week. And thank you all for joining us here. Once again, join us on any place where you get your podcasts. And again, our thanks to the Jacksonville Historical Society and the Jacksonville History Center, which we're also going to be talking about in the very near future, because that campaign is going to get going. And I'm very excited. We're all very excited about the History Center being developed. Thanks for joining us. Have a good week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Mike's on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at mikesonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mike's on Mike.